We're going to talk about children, but from the perspective of individuals that have decided to have children or will soon be having children late in life, relatively speaking. Join me to talk about this very important topic is Harshvardhan Roongta, Certified Financial Planner and co-founder of Roongta Securities. Thank you so much, Harsh, as always, for taking the time. What is the first bit of advice that you would give to individuals that decide to have a child late in life?
Hi, Alex. It's always a pleasure to be on this show. Well, you've broached upon a very important topic, which in fact is a reality of life these days. I mean, in earlier days, you would find that, people get married early, have children early, but that doesn't seem to be the case right now. Now, if you were to plot all these, age milestones with the financial requirements of children, you will notice that the major expenses specifically concerned when it comes to their higher educational requirements would start from the child's age of about 18 years of age. That is when you go in for undergraduation study, and going up to say post graduation, which could be say about 25 years of age. So typically between the age bracket of 18 years to 25, you will have a major expense on their educational requirements. Now, if a couple were to have children in and when they are say probably age 30 to 35 or even later for that matter, between 30-35 is a very normal age these days to have children. But if you were to extrapolate that and see while you're in the age bracket of say 50 to 60, your children then would be in the age of 18 to 25. So, this clearly indicates one very important, milestone, which is you're going to be approaching your retirement, and your children at that point in time are going to require huge sums of money for the undergraduation, post-graduation studies. So, invariably, you will notice in all such cases, individuals have saved up entire life, reached the age of say 50 to 60 years of age, and at that time, the entire retirement corpus is you has to be utilized rather for the purpose of higher education of children. So a couple then is left with nothing for themselves in their post-retirement life. So this is typically a situation which we need to estimate in advance. And in such cases where you're planning to have children late in life, you must prepare yourself to fund both these milestones in life at the same time. So one way to go about this would be, of course, the moment you start investing, you may not be married then, you may just be probably 25 years age yourself. You would possibly, assume that there are some liabilities going to come up in future, which could include children's higher education, where it's too early to think and to talk about. But these are the realities of life. And since you brought up this topic, I think any individual for that matter would need to estimate these kind of expenses and plan for them. So if you're planning for retirement, why don't you plan something which would possibly be a reality in future, which is your children's higher education, and plan for that and start saving for that. A situation two, the moment you're married, if you've not started thinking about your children's education much before your marriage, at least at the time of your marriage, I mean, the moment you're married, you must make some plan for children's higher educational requirements, because that is a must. You're a parent and it's your responsibility to provide good education to them. If you still cross that milestone as well, wherein you're married and you still haven't thought about it, it's been a couple of years, the best next time to do that is today, because you will have to start thinking of it. The earlier you start investing, the better.
Okay, fantastic. I think you've summed up quite a few scenarios, but I want to focus on the last one, which is what if that time has passed? You've not planned this. For a lot of people, having a child late in life comes as a bit of a surprise. It's not something that they've thought about, but they feel that gap and they want to fill it. In such a case, you would have to put certain other goals towards the back seat. How do you juggle all of these requirements, Harsh?
Alex, this is again a reality of life, and I'm very happy that we're talking about this topic right now. See, when you have a child, you must understand there is, if you look at the emotional aspect of it, of course, there is a huge amount of joy into the family, and it is, you cannot compare it with anything else for that matter. However, the fact also remains that when there is a new member added into the family, there is an entire ecosystem around that, and there are a lot of financial responsibilities that you have as a parent towards the child, and it's your duty to fulfill them. I mean, some of the basic things are, of course, ensuring a good, upbringing in terms of financial upbringing, giving them the facilities. Most importantly, ensuring that they are able to be on their feet, which is giving them good education and enabling them in their career. Well, if you're going to be required to spend money on those areas, certain goals which are discretionary in nature. So there would be a lot of, aspirational goals that couples have, or families have for that matter, would be a holiday, probably every year or once in 2 years, would be wanting a bigger car for that matter, a dream car, a high-end mobile or any lifestyle expenses for that matter will need to be compromised, because that is the easiest that you can compromise to fulfill all other real requirements in life. Now, as I mentioned earlier, there could be an impact on even the mandatory and important goals in life, such as retirement, or you may not be able to buy a new house because expenses have gone up for that matter. So I think the first and foremost is to embrace this new addition in the family and look to relook at your asset allocation plan. You may have started investing in something which is less in growth, more on security side, which is debt and less of equity. So you may need to revisit your asset allocation plan given the revised cash flows that you have. So you have less cash flow in your hand right now, so you'll have to make your money work harder. So probably just in a nutshell to say, there would need to be some compromises made on the discretionary goals that you have. At the same time, you will need to relook at the entire financial plan and moderate and recalibrate the entire portfolio to suit the fresh cash flows that you have and new financial goals.
I want to speak about it from the perspective of the single parent as well. In most situations, because of an unfortunate event, this has taken place. How should a single parent plan their finances when such an incident occurs?
Well, Alex, again, you've raised a very important topic. In fact, I must say, in the last 3 days that I've spoken to people, that two new cases have come to us where both of these cases are the couple is going into a divorce. So a couple of things need to be kept in mind, particularly for single parent. It may not necessarily be a financial do's and don'ts, but one of the basic important things that need to be kept in mind and implemented. The first thing being that you'll have to identify, as a single parent, you'll have to identify a guardian who would take care of your child in case something were to happen to you. So while as a couple, even if one parent, something happens to one parent, the other naturally is a natural guardian to the child and continues to take custody and guardianship of the child. However, in case of a single parent, you will need to put a set of documents in place. These are basic documents. You can take a legal advice on this and put some basic documents in place, such as a letter of guardianship. Many people may assume that in case a mother, for example, is a single parent and something were to happen to her, people tend to assume that the guardianship of the child will naturally go to the parents of the mother or siblings of the mother. Well, that is not true. In case of any such situation where the single parent is not there, in the absence of a letter of guardianship or a will which specifically assigns the guardianship to somebody, the court comes into picture and the court then assigns a guardian to the child. So, well, in case you want to avoid all these complications, it is best to put certain set of documents in place which clearly specify who the guardianship of the child will go to in case the single parent is not there. So, just a little bit of digressing from a financial, non-financial standpoint, but I thought this was a very important point which generally people tend to miss out when they go in for a divorce. And after that, and a single parent needs to put these documents in place. Nothing else, if not going too deep, the minimum thing that you can do is update your nominations, make a will instantly, and put all the requirements, all the assets that you have, how they're likely to go to your child. And if the child is minor, you'll have to appoint a guardian, as I mentioned earlier, to ensure that the funds are used in the manner for the benefit of the child.
Very important points that you've raised, Harsh. And very quickly, I want you to also talk about a concept that you spoke about to me earlier, which is a reverse mortgage. If push comes to shove, this is something that people might consider for want of money. How do you explain this?
Yes, Alex. So, we were talking about a situation where you have children late in life and their age, the requirement for higher education, comes in exactly when you're going to about to retire. So all your life savings essentially go into providing career-based education for your children, which is obviously a very natural thing to do. So what happens to couples in that sense, or what happens to people who are retiring then? I mean, there is one very interesting concept of reverse mortgage. It is just the opposite of taking a housing loan. So wherein you already have an asset in your hand, where you're living in probably, you have a house which you're living in. So you go in for a reverse mortgage, and wherein you assign when you mortgage that house to the housing finance company, and then they start paying you a fixed sum of money, and you are in possession of the house, you're living in that house, but it is mortgaged to the financial institution, and that pays you a regular installment for a decided period of time post retirement. So in case you don't have any savings left and you need shelter on your head, so what you do is you continue staying in that house, but you start encashing that and you start receiving that money to meet your post-retirement requirements. So you don't necessarily have to part the possession of the house or leave the house. It's not really a very pleasant thing. I spoke to you about this and I told you that it's not something very popular in India because we tend to be very close to our real estate property. We don't want to part with it. But in case you're left to a situation where push comes to shove, and you have to fund your post-retirement requirements, I think this is one of the options that can be considered.
I think this is a very important topic that we've just discussed today. And Harsh, thank you so much for taking the time. Really appreciate it.
My pleasure.